very new series of online tastings. Very big welcome tonight to the Heart of England Whisky Alliance. For those who are members of the Alliance, we were, of course, supposed to be with you this evening in person at a great location, one of the oldest pubs in England for a whisky tasting. Of course, we can't be there, but hopefully this is the next best thing. Good evening to anyone out there who is watching who isn't in the Heart of England Whisky Association, who's just joined us because they love what we're doing and they're really enjoying our online tastings. We're going to taste through 5 whiskies tonight on our tasting. We're also going to go to an after party. So if you fancy it, after the main tasting, we've got a little event over on another channel where you can join us for a few more drams. If you don't at the moment already have any, you should have some whiskey. You should have 5 whiskies in front of you if you've got the tasting pack. It might be also a good idea to get some water. If you don't have any water, you can't necessarily open up the whiskies to their fullest potential. So we're going to give you 10 seconds to run to the kitchen and grab a bit of water for dilution. Tonight, we're going to taste a selection of our core range whiskies. We're going to start off with Mack. We're going to then go on to the Brooks whiskey. From there, we're going to work through into the Svensk Ek, followed by the Svensk Rök. And then you've got a very special treat, one of our latest releases, an extremely interesting whiskey, another world first for us, and a delicious dram, which is perfect for the time of the year. The sun is shining here in Gävle, so the whiskey we have finally will be perfect for the lovely springtime evening we're enjoying. I'm not in Gävle, I'm in Stockport, but I'm also joined by a couple of people here around the UK, well, actually in the Midlands, both of which are members of the Heart of England Whisky Alliance. First of all, I am joined with the now very famous in whisky circles and elsewhere, Vin PF from No Nonsense Whisky. Vin, are you there? Technical problems.
That's
Here
it.
Here he is.
I saw a countdown, so I thought I'd better wait for that to happen before I said anything.
How you doing, Stevie? How's lockdown treating you?
Surprisingly well. I'm one of the lucky few where I get to do a little bit of work from home. I have to kind of balance that out with not touching any of this while I'm working, but I can just work in this little office here, and my boss now sees my set, which is interesting. But yeah, it's going pretty well. It's going pretty well.
Good. And No Nonsense Whisky, how long have you been going for now?
I'm coming up to 4 years in August, so it's been a significant chunk of my life now. So yeah, it's going pretty well. It's going pretty well. Steady, I think. Steady is the word you would use.
7,000 subscribers. That's really impressive.
Yeah,
that's going great.
It's unbelievable, really, to be honest with you. I started this thing just as an outlet because sadly, none of my friends that I live local to really like whiskey, so I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I thought I would just sort of blurb at whoever would listen, and it turns out some people listen. So, well,
something's working. And what do you think it is that people especially enjoy?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think what I try to do is do things as briefly as possible, so less than 10 minutes. So I think they're very consumable, like on a commute or something like that. But I also try not to. I don't go very in depth into tasting notes. I just give the overarching idea of what a flavour profile is, and then assess that versus the value of the whiskey. So I think that's really what it is. I don't score or anything like that. So people just seem to enjoy the really boiled down review, very quick and consumable.
I suppose you then let people have take their time to make their own conclusions when they get the whiskey themselves. Fantastic. And in lockdown, do you think this is going to change the way people are consuming whiskey? Do you think people are going to be examining new things at the moment?
Absolutely. I think it's important for stuff like this. We've been doing this for a while now on the Whiskey Tube community, but now this is an absolute necessity for people like yourselves and clubs and whatever to get involved in live streams like this, because not only is this kind of like a new reality for us, we don't know when it's going to stop, but once this has happened once, there's nothing to say that this might not happen again in the future, so we need to be relatively prepared for that. But I think it's great. It's a shame that we can't all be sitting in the same room together, but with the internet the way it is today, then we basically are, right? We're all sitting in a room together, one way or the other.
And also joining us here in the room tonight are Anthony and Nicky from New Dram Drinker. Welcome, Anthony and Nicky. Hello. There we go. We've got to do a bit of acrobatics to get on screen at some points. We're trying to keep up with the director's choice of shot. How are you keeping this evening?
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. So, new drum drinker, relatively new to the whiskey scene. Tell us what it's all about.
It's just a channel basically aimed at new dram drinkers. Hence the name. Because we're trying to find channels online that weren't maybe aimed at people who are a bit more advanced down their journey, and we had trouble finding it. So we kind of thought, you know, why not? Let's create it ourselves. And we're here now, and we can't believe we're here. To be honest, it's an honour to be here with you two.
Oh, well, Vin's the star of this show. Let me be clear about that. So you're all about introducing people into whiskey, getting them into it for the first time. What do you think sort of there's some of the mistakes that people make as they're getting into whiskey, or what sort of pitfalls can you try and help people avoid?
I think for us, we felt like really pressured to get really good at it quick. You know, the whole nosing, tasting, I definitely felt really intimidated because, you know, people saying, oh, I can get, you know, wet cut grass and meadows, sunny days. And I'd be like, it just smells like whiskey to me. I couldn't get anything. So people put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I think our whole channel was to document our journey. And I think people just need to do their journey. You know, it's everybody's is individual, isn't it? So don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're still going to have fun.
Definitely. And whiskey is a very personal thing, and everyone takes different things from it. And with a great whiskey, you can have all sorts of different experiences. And what sort of plans do you have for New Dram Drinker? Where do you see it going in the future?
We're kind of in the middle of a kind of transitional period now, because we've got like new website that's just come up yesterday.
Okay.
We're going to try and use that as almost a behind the scenes kind of look to what goes on with creating the channel, and like there's a members club, free members club and things like that. And just trying to evolve, really, just maybe up our equipment and make our content more kind of in depth and fun. And our channel's almost the opposite to Vin's, in that Vin was saying is quite kind of short and sharp and concise and to the point. Ours is a little bit more edited and kind of things flying across the screen and kind of trying to keep your attention as much as we can. So yeah, more of that, because that's what I enjoy doing. So that is my kind of release of trying to make our videos as much fun to watch as we can, kind of thing.
Well, it's clearly working because your popularity has been soaring in the last few months. So it's great to see it all going so well.
Thank you.
Well,
appreciate it.
Tonight, the whiskies that you're going to taste are all available from your favorite local independent retailer, your favorite online retailer, or of course at mackmyra.co.uk, our web shop. We're very, very happy to answer any questions you've got. So if there's anything puzzling you, if I've overlooked anything that you want more clarification on, please pop that into the chat box. We'll do our best to field those. But without further ado, we're going to get into some whiskies. So first things first whiskey in your glasses this evening is Mack. We're going to talk a little bit about the history as we know Mack. Mack's actually our newest whiskey in the core range. So Mackmyra, if you don't know about us, we've been distilling whiskey for a touch over 20 years. It was December 1999 when the first drops came off the still. The story starts a little bit earlier than that, a year previously in 1998, when 8 pals had a little reunion at a cabin in the mountains. And after digging their way in through the snow, they unpacked to discover that each of them had brought with them a bottle of single malt whiskey. So they sat down the evening and said, well, we have to have a proper whiskey tasting, and the drams flowed. And at some point in the evening, someone asked the question of, why is there no whiskey being made in Sweden? Swedes love whiskey. Swedes are great drinkers, as I'm sure you know. If any know Swedes, they do really very much enjoy fine wines, beers, and single malt whiskey. And they said, it's strange. Why has no one done this previously? In fact, a few years prior to that, the laws had recently been relaxed in Sweden, so it meant that people could indeed start up distilleries. But despite that real awareness and love of whiskey there, no one had done it previously. So the next day, they woke up a little bit fuzzy-headed, as you might imagine. They went for a quick ski to clear their heads, and they came back and they said, we said last night, why is there no Swedish single malt whiskey? Why don't we do it? Why don't we go ahead and start the first? And so they did. And they started working on the ideas that would later become Mackmyra. And the name of the whiskey that we make is taken from the village where we started, Mackmyra. a little old working village on a farm estate in the south of Sweden. And we started making our whiskey there in an old mill, and a building which was part forge, part mill, part turbine hall, dating from different parts in history. And it was there in December 99. There we go. That's a shot of the original distillery, where we started making our whiskey using all local ingredients. So we use exclusively Swedish ingredients. We use barley from farms all within about 100 kilometers of the distillery. We ferment our mash with Swedish yeast. We occasionally mature our whiskey in Swedish oak as well. And we do that with three main guiding principles. Our first principle is innovation. Let's do new, exciting things. Our second guiding principle is Swedishness. Not only using local ingredients, but also with an ethos that reflects the heritage and the people of where we are. And the third guiding principle is eco-friendly whiskey making. Now, the old distillery was fantastic. It's very pretty, very beautiful. It did us very proud for many years. But we decided that we needed something a bit more special. And in 2012, we moved 7 miles down the valley to this place, our Gravity Distillery. And Mack is the first whiskey in our core range, which is exclusively from our Gravity Distillery. If you've got a full bottle at home, you can turn it around and see on the back there, the little symbol, which is this building in profile. Mack was brought out because we wanted to do something which is a little bit more accessible. We wanted to reach more people. We wanted something that could be enjoyed at different occasions. We wanted to have a whiskey which was a great whiskey just to grab when you fancy a little dram of something, or if you're in a bar, to make some really interesting cocktails with. So people love enjoying our whiskeys as they put their feet up in their favorite chair at home. But maybe if you want a cheeky old-fashioned in a bar, this could be the ideal whiskey for it. The Gravity Distillery is where we now make our whiskey. And it's called that because we use the force of gravity to assist the production process. So things start up here. This is where it all begins. This is the bar. So all great ideas come from a bar. And we have a sky bar here. We can see out over the forest. You can also almost see to the old distillery. The grain comes in up here. And we mill and create the grist. And that drops down to be hydrated. And down here we have the mash tun where the water is formed. That drops down to the stills. Here is where the fermentation takes place. Fermentation over about 3.5 days, which is longer than most distilleries. And the beer drops down here to the stills. Double pot stills from 4 sides of Roths. Not the original ones, which are still back at the old place. These are commissioned for the new distillery. These are a little bit larger, but fundamentally the same size and spec. So Mack is £36.50. It is a single malt whiskey. It is made, of course, exclusively with the same ingredients as all our whiskies are. And it's actually my favorite in the range. Why? Because it does so much for the money. On the nose, I get a toffee banana note, a little bit of toffee apple, a bit of apple pie and a touch of custard. It's got a lovely chewy quality about it. It's got a nice richness that, for that price, you often expect something to be a bit thinner, a little bit weaker, but it's really jumps out of the glass a treat. There's lots to explore with this whiskey. On the palate, loads more toffee, really chewy, really lovely, rich toffee notes and stewed fruits. It is an absolutely cracking dram for the money. I think it's always a great achievement. It's very straightforward to make quite fancy whiskey. Believe it or not, you can make really, really lovely whiskey very easily, but it'll come at a premium price. To make something which is value for money like this, which gives you all that depth, that richness, that lovely elegance, it's quite an achievement, and we've really pulled it off here. And we were really, really proud when this whiskey became the #2 seller in Sweden the year it launched. Not only because it's such great value for money, but because the price is awesome as well. Vin, how do you find Mack?
Yeah, actually, I kind of mirror some of the thoughts in the chat going on here. For me, it's heaps of vanilla and pears. I often say on Speyside whiskies, especially, I get a lot of orchard fruits like apples and pears specifically. But this is like weirdly different, like a pear crumble almost. But it's certainly got a huge nose on it, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Anthony, Nicky, how about you? What are your thoughts on Mack?
Banana custard. It's that vanilla for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good. Yeah, like the vanilla, the fresh fruits. There's always this little fresh tingle that I get, a bit citrusy.
Yeah, it took me straight back when you said about the apple, toffee apple. It took me straight back to the theme park as a child, walking around,
Definitely.
chewing on your toffee apple. And
Yeah.
I had a whole kind of scene emerge around me as I drank it, kind of thing. So yeah, that's one of the main things that I got from it. Yeah, it's awesome.
All the fun of a fair in a glass.
Absolutely.
It's just easy. It's gorgeous. Yeah, really good.
Really, I always come at it from a kind of cocktail side as well. So what cocktails I think, or what I can add to it to make cocktails and things. So it's kind of, it's nice when there's so many kind of avenues you can go down to create drinks with.
Definitely, you've got that citrus quality. You've got those orchard fruits. You've got the bananas, the toffees. There's loads you can riff off. We did a little session recently with the bar. Do you guys know the Vanguard? Not too far from you in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, everyone knows that. We're working with Sam down there to create some cocktails for a session we're doing in a couple of weeks, and he did this wonderful peach iced tea, and it's brilliant. And we're doing lockdown cocktails, so it's about digging out what's in the cupboards and making some nice drinks from them. He went for a can of peaches and some English breakfast tea bags, and it works a treat.
Yeah, it sounds good.
So, have we got any questions from the audience on Mack? Something that we want to make clear about Mack is that, yes, it's down to 40%. It's not in one of our usual fancy bottles, and we do undertake some chill filtration, and we do add a little touch of caramel in there. Now, these are decisions you have to make sometimes, depending on what sort of whiskey you're making. We're not making £80 a bottle single cask whiskey here. We're making a whiskey which is accessible to absolutely everybody. And when you drop the ABV down, you have to make some choices about how you make it, and that's what we've made. But we have to be very clear about that, and we do display that on the back of the bottle there. We haven't got time to fully explore everything about that, everything about chill filtration, everything about caramel. But suffice to say, we're not worried about that because we know we've got an absolutely fantastic whiskey here. Cheers, Vin. So 40% ABV.
Never mind.
No, it did. It's great. And £36.50 from a web shop or your favourite local whiskey specialist. Any questions on the chat? No? Okay. Spiritworks Tom. Definitely try this in old fashioned when it opens up again. If you don't know the Spiritworks in Lichfield, you should get down there. It's a fantastic bar, distillery, and shop. The whiskey selection and the rum selection, for that matter, is phenomenal. So as soon as they're back open, get down to the Spiritworks in Lichfield. Nice to see you, Tom. Okay, we're going over to whiskey number 2. That is, with the blue label, the Brooks Whisky, Mackmyra Brooks Whisky. And this one can tell you a bit about the name of our distillery, Mackmyra. Well, that is the little name of the village where we started 20 years ago. Mackmyra it's a name that comes from Old Norse, so centuries old, this name. The second part, Myra, not dissimilar to an English word, mire, swamp, bog. Mack are little bugs, little moths, midgy type things. So Mackmyra, it means the midge swamp. It sounds unpleasant. It is very, very pretty. Trust me, it's an absolutely gorgeous place. You should visit, and please do come and see us. We're about, well, once we're allowed out of our homes, we're about an hour and a half on the train north of Stockholm Airport. So please come and see the Gravity Distillery. Please go and see the old place at Mackmyra Bruk, where we now make our sensational organic gins. Mackmyra is what's known as in Sweden as a bruket, and a bruket is a place where things are done. So it's a village on a bigger estate manor where people lived, and in our case, it was partially the building was the forge, and part of it was a mill, and so what was necessary to be done in the village was done around these buildings. And Brooks Whisky, the word Brooks, it translates to different things. The more contemporary translation is utility or industry. But a Brooks can be something which is your favorite thing in that bracket, something that you go to time and time again. A Brooks object is your perennial favorite. And that's what calls the Brooks Whisky. It is a go-to. It is an unquestionably easygoing, approachable, accessible dram which anyone can enjoy. It has got lovely easy go notes of lemon and honey and sherbet and grass. Sorry, you did say, guys, about the grass, but there's definitely a bit of grassiness there for me. There's a nuttiness, that there's more soft vanillas now, less apparent, but more of a sort of creme anglaise thing going on. There's a lovely tart tartan quality about this. Brooks whiskey, until Mack stole the show, was our most popular whiskey out there. And Brooks whiskey now is a little bit different. People may know Brooks whiskey as a single malt whiskey. However, we've changed it a little bit. You don't see the word single malt whiskey on Brooks anymore. Why? Have we run out of whiskey? No. In fact, the reverse is true. We've got loads of whiskey. And we had a bit of a conundrum a few years back. The new place came on stream in 2012, and having spent many millions of kroner there, it makes absolutely sensational whiskey. And it's a little bit different in profile to the stuff at the old place, which is, of course, as you all well know, very, very delicious. But we thought we would bring out a whiskey which brought the two together, which was a marriage of both of those. Now, in terms of how they're different, well, the grain's the same, the barley's the same. The yeast is the same. It's a very famous yeast in Sweden. It's called kronjast. The version we use is actually for cinnamon buns, the famous Swedish dessert. It's the same barrels. It's the same warehouse. If you know about our warehousing, we mature the vast majority, all the whiskies you're tasting tonight, down a mine, 50 meters underground in an old iron ore mine. It's the same casks. Here we're using primarily first fill bourbon. So if you're not familiar with what a first fill bourbon cask is, well, it's the barrels that we used in the States, technically for Tennessee whiskey as well. And those first fill bourbon barrels, they've been used just the once for that American whiskey. And they are still chock full of flavor. They're still full of those lovely creamy vanillins and lactose, that coconut, that custard. And they come to us. This whiskey also uses a little bit of sherry, a little bit of Oloroso cask rather. And we're going to get a little nuttiness coming through from that. And we also use a bit of Swedish oak. We'll talk more about that with the third whiskey along this evening, but a touch of Swedish oak on this one too. But here we're actually comprising whiskey that was made at two distilleries. One here in Gävle and one 6 miles in that direction at Mackmyra. And we brought the two together here for the Brooks whiskey. And this is new and improved. The whiskey from the new place, it tastes even better than the whiskey from the old place. And it's elevated the whole thing. So all those things that we love about Brooks, that freshness, that brightness, that real approachability. We hear phrases like breakfast whiskey bandied about nowadays a little bit. I'm sure I started that actually. I think I used it to describe Brooks whiskey many years ago. It's so bright, it's so fresh, it's so easy going. It does what it's supposed to. It's a Brooks whiskey. It's a whiskey for any day, for any occasion. I like this in the summertime, particularly as the weather warms up. I think it's an ideal springtime whiskey. I call it a picnic whiskey. I when I get the chance, like to have this, on a hillside with a few butties and lashings of ginger beer. It's got a lovely, fresh spring summer quality about it. So, Sam the Whiskey Novice, clarify, it can't be called single malt as it's effectively from two distilleries. Spot on, Simon. We're not calling it single malt whiskey here. It did used to be a single malt whiskey, but if you look closely at the label, those words do not appear anymore. So, because we're not under Scotch Whisky Association regulations, we don't have to put something on there like blended malt whiskey. We're not obliged to, so we just leave it off. We keep it as the Brooks whiskey, but we'd like to tell you all about how we started out in that village just a few miles down the road. We built our new distillery, and this is a combination of both of those. So not a single malt whiskey. We're not claiming it is. It is a combination of the two distilleries. Anthony, Nicky, for new Dram drinkers, how do you think Brooks whiskey works?
Do you know what I love? I'm a complete word whore, and I didn't know that Brooks meant like your favourite thing. And Brooks whiskey has always been my favourite Mackmyra. So that like made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, easy to drink, light, fresh, summery. Yeah, we always just, it's really easy. If you watched our, we did a mac and cheese, like where we tasted all of your whiskies, and I think I say in that one, this is my favourite whiskey. Yeah.
I'm getting almost like a lemon yogurt.
Yeah.
Kind of like a lemon peel, like a flamed lemon peel. So it's like a kind of note as well.
So I get the creme brulee, and I feel like it's the burnt vanilla on the top. Yeah, that's what I get, the
went to
burnt vanilla.
Yogurt,
Yeah.
but, it's very nice.
Lovely.
Very
Really,
nice.
it is my favourite Mackmyra. Although Mack is like charging up behind it really fast now.
Which is your favourite child? I mean, they're all sensational, aren't they?
Don't go there.
They're not here.
In the after party, we'll get to. No, it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
It's
it's really easy
yeah.
drink. Not, and like you said, as a new Dram drinker, it's light. It's, you know, you could put ginger ale in it. That kind of. Yeah, really easy. Yeah.
gorgeous.
Light and fruity.
Gorgeous. Stunning.
Oh, thank you very much. And Lee Baker there, Lee saying, no, it's all banana for me. Yeah, me too. There's bananas and custard and foam, you know, foam banana sweets that you don't see so much anymore. I think they maybe banned them because they were, I don't know, maybe doing bad things to people. But this weren't doing any bad things. This only does good things. Vin, where are you with Brooks Whisky? Tell us a little bit about how you feel about this one.
It's a funny one because you can see I've got some bottles back here. I've had to tap into the sample of this. I've actually had 2 bottles of this in the past. I had one that was the original single malt and the other. And it's just a fabulous, at the time it was an entry level whiskey before you had the Mack there as well. But I think that's remarkable about these so far, and I think you will see as you go along, everyone who's watching along. I think I said this to you the first time I met you when we had the tasting in Birmingham, Alex, is that there's a definite Mackmyra profile throughout the range, and it's that tropical banana-y note that really propagates through the whiskies. This one's got like vanillas, the tropical. It's just like exactly like you said, fresh and clean. There's some extra citrusy in there as well. For me, it's I was perfectly happy with this as an entry level, and then obviously when Mack came along, it was absolutely like brilliant to see that. This one pips it for me so far, but my favourite hasn't been talked about yet, so I'll talk about that when it comes along.
Definitely. I mean, Mack is sensational. It's really accessible, but here with Brooks, we go to another level of complexity. There's far more to explore with this one. MC Drama, great name on there. Pencil Shavings and Tarto Citron, definitely. Like Anthony was saying, that sort of creaminess, that lemony quality, that's gentle influence of the oak coming through as well. I get a touch of Bakewell tart. There's a little nuttiness in there as well. Maybe a cherry stone, but loads of lashings of custard. And then we've got MC Drama on screen with some incredible facial hair there. MC Drama. I would
don't have it anymore, unfortunately. It's all gone.
Oh, really? That's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah, he's. I managed to. Obviously, I've met him a few times as part of this thing, but he runs a pancake stall at the place I work sometimes. So, yeah,
okay.
He's lost it, and I've started growing mine.
Well, we've got 12 weeks now to get it back. So Brooks Whisky on the bottle, if you have one in front of you. I've not got a box here today for some reason, but we've got the story of Mackmyra. We've got the old distillery, the new distillery, the Swedish oak, the smoker, the 30-litre pot still that the founders welded themselves. We've got the 8. Here we are on our fancy bottle. So Mack was a bit more a simple bottle. Here with Brooks, we're on our proper bottle. We've got the 8 little dimples, 8 little knurls in the base of the bottle. Can you guess what they might be all about? Well, if you recall, I said there were 8 founders, and each of those is a thumbprint for each of the 8 founders. On the stopper, we've got our little symbol of Mackmyra, our little emblem. Is that a candle? Is that a person? Is that a bottle? Is a whiskey glass? You tell us. But this is another great little feature. And if you explore our bottles, our labels, look, you've even got our barley code on the back there.
Yeah, I love that.
Amazing little feature. So whenever you get a new bottle of Mackmyra, make sure you have a good look at the box, a good look at the bottle and the label, and see what you can discover. Mack comes in about £42.50 from your local whiskey specialist. Fantastic value for money, I think. In terms of age in this one, and of course we don't put any age statements on our whiskey. We've done 2 age statement whiskies in the past. We did 10 years a few years ago. We had to be the first Swedish distillery to do a 10-year-old whiskey because we were the first Swedish distillery, single malt distillery. So it was very important to do that. At the same time, we did a whiskey called 12, which meant 12. But otherwise, you don't see age statements on our whiskies. Why? We don't think they're especially relevant. Particularly when nowadays you're using such fantastic quality of casks, particularly when we're using amazing ingredients, amazing processes. Age is significant in making whiskey, of course. It's not whiskey until it's been in a barrel for 3 years. And of course, it does evolve with time. But there's no real correlation between how long it's in the barrel and how good it tastes. It does change, but it depends what you're going for. Brooks whiskey, we've got whiskey in there, some down at sort of 6 years, some around 10 years. It may be a bit older from the old place as well, averaging out around 8.5 years, something like that. But people often tell us that they're surprised when they find out the age of our whiskies. They would often assume they're a little bit older because the development is there. And that's down to a few reasons. It's down to the quality of the spirit. If you taste our spirit as it comes, well, not off the still directly, that wouldn't be permitted, but after it's allowed to settle for a few moments, you'll find that all those flavors of orchard fruits, of lemon, of sherbet are there. It's really bright and really elegant. It's lovely as it's made. So we retain that through our maturation. The quality of casks we're using is absolutely excellent. We're primarily using first fill barrels. In the case of our Oloroso casks, they're new oak that we've saturated ourselves, so loads of flavor coming from those. And I think a huge part of our maturation and the development that we achieve is down to where it's matured. 50 meters underground in the old Bodas mine. Any Swedes watching, forgive me, I will murder a few pronunciations. I can't quite get the A with a circle over the top quite right. So, 4 years in with Mackmyra, still not quite got it. Sorry, I'll work on it. But the mine is crucial to how our whiskey develops. The temperature never gets any cooler than about 8 degrees centigrade. It never gets any warmer than 10 degrees. It's a perfect continuous temperature. What's also perfect is the humidity. It's underground. It's very humid, and the vapor doesn't escape anywhere. It's all trapped, sunk here underground. So the vapor circulates around the barrels. When we have high humidity, we don't lose water. We lose alcohol. So the ABV goes down, but what you're left with is a much more supple spirit. And I think this is perfectly exemplified here with Brooks whiskey. Just gonna see if you've got any questions on there about Brooks whiskey. No, not for now. Lemon vanilla dessert, yeah, it's all over that today, isn't it? Bags and bags of tart citron. Okay, lovely. Okay, we're going to go on to whiskey number 3. And at the beginning, I did say have some water at the ready because I think the next whiskey, oh, that's quite cool, isn't it? I think the next whiskey evolves perfectly with a drop of water. Okay, we are going next for Svensk Ek. Svensk Ek. So, what does Svensk Ek mean? Well, Svensk means Swedish, quite clearly. Ek is simpler than you might think. It means oak. Svensk Ek is Swedish oak. A single malt whiskey. So here we're back to single malt whiskey. A single malt whiskey bottle at 46.1%. Why 46.1%? Because that is the threshold at which non-chill filtered whiskey retains ability. Drop down below that, non-filtered whiskey at 42%. When it gets cold, you might see some coagulation. You might see some cloudiness appear. But at 46, it stays clear. And 46 gives us some range in which to adjust our whiskey. So adding a few drops of water to this, I think, opens up a treat. But we can start tasting this one just as it comes. So what's Svensk Ek given to this whiskey? Well, I think it's immediately apparent as soon as you put your nose in there. Toasty, warm, fragrant spice. Cardamom, ginger, cinnamon, pepper, sandalwood. Fragrant wood notes, almost like freshly sawn wood. A little touch of wet bark there, but a freshness again, and that freshness pervades through all of our whiskies. We make very bright, elegant whiskey. This one's a bit richer, a bit bolder, but it's still got that finesse about it that you find with all Mackmyra whiskies. Svensk Ek. What's Svensk Ek all about? Swedish oak. Where does it come from? Well, you may, the botanists, the arborologists among you may be saying, hang on, Sweden, oak, that doesn't quite make sense. Surely oak only comes from warmer, more temperate parts of the world, and you'd be mostly right. However, the Swedes decided in a few years ago, around 1830s, 1840s, that they needed some oak to build ships with. Obviously, Sweden, with a country with a vast coastline, of commerce going across the sea there, they needed ships for the navy. And they said, well, if we're going to build ships, we're going to need some wood to do that. And it's very sensible to become self-sufficient. So let's plant a forest of oak trees that we can use in future years to build our navy with. The trees were planted and they were left. And then a few years later, iron came along as a shipbuilding material, and then steel came along, and then oak fell into obscurity for shipbuilding, except for smaller craft. And then we got a few years into the 20th century, and the manager of the forest rang the Navy to advise their trees were ready, and they were met with a stony silence. They were no longer required. So we thought we would rescue those trees, put them to a far more interesting future than mere boats, and we made barrels out of them. Svensk Ek is what we use to make barrels for this whiskey, Swedish oak casks. Swedish oak grows in quite tough conditions. Very cold winters, very harsh climate through certain months of the year there. So the growth is slower, the grain is tighter, the flavors are richer and bolder and fuller, and that really lovely fine spices all from that Swedish oak. At 46%, this is a delightful dram. On the entry, some red apple, some cherry, some morello cherry, a bit of cherry skin, a bit of underripe peach there, a little touch of dried apricot, and it floods with caramel and toffee and sweet spice, and that's down to that Svensk Ek. Guys, any flavors that coming through for you initially on the Svensk Ek?
I'm getting bread and butter pudding, but with rice.
Nice.
It's a bit burnt on the top, you know, when it gets burnt around the edge. Kind of real caramelized note. Oh, stunning, really good.
On the nose, I get like bread, but you know, it's like when you've made the dough for bread, not bread at the oven. You know, the dough, the yeast when it's just like warming. But yeah, on the palate, all the spices, the vanilla, the lovely sort of like just warm, like
This is a perfect put your feet up, take it easy, fires on, have an early evening kind of dram. That bread and butter pudding, that kind of the sultanas in there, the custard in there as well, the cinnamon sprinkled on top, all those lovely spices.
Yeah. We get all the baked stuff. So we made some cocktails yesterday, and because of the ingredients we added, it made it a very red cocktail. But both of us said we called this cocktail burnt sienna because you got the burnt like something. You don't quite know what it is, but obviously everything you said has just made real sense now. Yeah.
All down to that slow growth Swedish oak.
Yeah.
Vin, how's that working for you?
Yeah, really good. I mean, it's I won't go through the same notes as I've gone through before. We will get in that profile coming through. But for me, the add-on to this is that grassy note. As Carlo said, it just come up on the screen. I get some aniseed off of this.
Definitely,
it's one of the things when you're making the reviews and the videos, you worry about putting out notes like that nobody else is saying, but that's where it's that individual journey. But definitely that, and a little bit of menthol on it as well, I think, is what I get from this. But as people have been saying, very spicy. It's that extra spicy dynamic. Like
even a little bit of incense now as well. Some really fragrant notes, some really sort of perfume notes starting to appear. Yeah. And this is the thing with Svensk Ek, it's a whiskey that demands exploration. It's one that you really have to loosen up and explore. And Vin there with the pipette, I'm going to be a little more heavy-handed, but I'm going to try and show you. If you watch as the water goes in, can you see the disturbance that's taking place in the glass? We're changing the way everything sits together. We're putting in different ions with different charges that are going to pull around different molecules and change the way that everything combines. We're going to allow the alcohol to become less prevalent, but the flavor to become more so. Immediately, this becomes more delicate, more fresh, more I think more sort of culinary spices now. I get a little bit more of so almost a curry spice kind of note.
Yeah, spices definitely.
Cardamom.
Yeah.
On the nose.
Menthol.
Fruits are there, like orchard fruits on the nose.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's really fruity now.
It opens up a treat with a drop of the water, this one.
Oh.
So what else is going on with Svensk Ek? Well, the first of all, bourbon cask is the mainstay of our maturation, our barrel program. It gives us everything we need. It gives really lovely, elegant whiskey and nice, chewy pillows of vanilla to lay everything upon. But we introduced some other casks here. We touched on this a moment ago with the Brooks whiskey, but we're bringing in some Oloroso here. We're bringing in some nutty flavors of oxidized wines from Spain. We introduce those to American oak barrels. We saturate them ourselves. We actually create our own Oloroso casks because we think we get a perfect profile, which is just right for what we want to do. And we mature those again down the line. So we've got some bourbon cask, from touching on about half the whiskey in here is first fill bourbon cask whiskey. Maybe 40% of that is Oloroso cask matured, and that final 10% is Swedish oak. And it's delivered so much. It's very, very powerful. We do not need to do 100% Swedish oak here because it would just be too intense. You can do 100% Swedish oak. We have done 100% Swedish oak stuff in the past. It is wonderful. If you ever wanted your own personal barrel of our whiskey, we're going to talk more about that at the after party. You can do Swedish oak as an option. Carlo, yeah, definitely. A little bit of licorice. No, you're not mad at all. Paul, more menthol with the water. Certainly is there too. Oh, and Tom, thank you very much. The swirls that we saw when we added the water are viscometric walls. Viscometric walls. It's a good job we're saying that 2 drams in, because later on we couldn't really imagine more challenging. Viscometric walls, and that's. I'm going to thank you very much for that, Tom. I didn't know that. I'm going to use that in future if you don't mind. I definitely some more menthol there. I'll get a little bit more. What is that I'm detecting? It's bonbons, lemon bonbons, some sort of fruit jellies.
I think it's a licorice I'm getting.
Licorice again. This is a tremendous whiskey. I think it makes amazing classic cocktails. Things like old fashions go really well with this, because that orange peel note, which is just sort of appearing in the whiskey there. When you exude that with when you enhance that with a little bit more orange peel, it really does work well. The orchard fruit quality, there's a lot to work with here. Black currant is a flavour we can emphasise in this one too. I think some cocktails with black currant, with cassis, or even things like creme de mure can be quite interesting. We've got a lovely food pairing you can try with this one, which is brioche with balsamic vinegar and cherry conserve. If you've never had that, it's certainly worth trying. Heart of England Whiskey Alliance, I'm very sorry, we would have been having that tonight at the tasting, but don't worry, we will have that in the autumn. Hopefully we'll reconvene later in the year. 52 pounds, 70 cl at 46.1%, available from all fantastic retailers. Okay.
Definitely
It's a great drop.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about some other products that are available on the market today at other prices before we came on air, and I think this one, for me, it really fulfills that test of great value for money. It's a huge whiskey, full of complexity, incredibly elegant, loads to explore, and again, tremendous value for money.
Yeah.
Svensk Ek.
I think it's one of those drams we would sit in our bar and drink and talk about all night. You know, when you would just sit with that and just like write notes down and then have another dram and write more notes down, and yeah.
It never ends. There's just so much, and it's a sign of a great spirit. You know, if you leave a little bit in the glass, and then when you go to bed and come back in the morning and you smell it, it's still there. It's still giving flavour. It's still.
Okay.
Never done that, however.
Morning pizza, isn't it?
No judgment here.
Hey, we do this for a living, so we've got to make sure we're fully experienced in every way possible. Tremendous. The incense appearing again. Okay, so we've looked at 3 of our core range whiskies so far. We've done Mack, which is our entry point, £36.50. Lovely toffee and banana notes in that one. Pears poached in caramel too. Brooks whiskey, it's bold, it's fresh, it's fragrant, it's got an incredible delicacy about it, a perfect spring summer whiskey. And we've just had the bold and spicy toffee driven Svensk Ek. The next whiskey we're going to have is a little bit different. It's smoky. It's Svensk Rök. If you move over to, we've got Anthony's fan. We've got move over to our little grey miniature over here, Svensk Rök. Well, we know what Svensk means. We did that in the last whiskey. How about Rök? What English word does that resemble? The answer is not rock. The answer is, well, it does resemble, but it's not related to. I still think it is. It's related to the word reek in English, which has its origins in Germanic, rauch. Rök in Old English meant smoke. Pardon me, reek in Old English meant smoke. So Svensk Rök, it means Swedish smoke. how do we do our Swedish Snook? What makes our Swedish Snook a little bit different? Well, we take our local barley and we lay it out on the malting floor. We have our own malting floor. Let me just get this right, about 100 meters, 120 meters in this direction is our maltings. We have our own malting floor. We're one of 9 distilleries in the world who does floor maltings the old-fashioned way, the labor-intensive way, the handcrafted way. The barley we use, as we know, it's all from local farms, and we lay it out on that floor. And I say we, it's really Håkan. Håkan is our maltster, our expert who does all our maltings. Here he's standing in the front of our smoker. Our smoker is, in fact, a 20-foot shipping container that we've repurposed into a kiln. And just behind him, the box you see behind him is actually where the burning takes place, where the furnace is. So on the bottom layer, we use a bit of kindling just to get the fire going. Upon that sits the peat. At tastings, people say, do you have peat in Sweden? Well, yeah, of course we do. There's peat all over the world. Peat bogs exist in many different parts of the world, and we've got plenty of it in Sweden. We've got different, it was laid on different times to different plants. We get different flavors coming through, but our peat is local. It comes from just a few miles down the road, I think in that direction, a place called Karinmossen, a local peat source. So we put that in the smoker and we get that going, but we also bring in another flavor, another Scandinavian flavor, a flavor which adds to our whiskey something extra special, a certain note of forest, of spruce, of resin, of oil, of bonfire, of campfire. The flavor that we introduce, which makes our Swedish smoke so unique, is juniper. We hear the word juniper, we automatically think gin. And juniper berries are used to make gin, but we're not using any juniper berries here. What we are using are twigs of juniper. From the bushes, these twigs, which are full of resin and are covered with needles, these little green needles, which are full of flavor, and we burn those together with the peat. So our Swedish smoke is created from both locally sourced peat and juniper twigs. Whilst the forest, which you can see here, of course I'm here just on the edge of the forest, we've got plenty of juniper. We've got plenty of juniper here in the forest. We've also got lots of blueberry bushes, but we're not allowed to take the juniper from there. It's a protected forest. We are donated the juniper from from the power company when they do maintenance on the power lines, that they harvest it, take it away and give it to us. So fitting in with our eco-conscious production values. So we dry that for about 3 days. We actually make 2 versions of our smoky barley, Rök and extra Rök. Regular Rök is a day over smoke and 2 days over hot air. Extra Rök is 2 days over smoke and just a day over hot air. And depending on what we're doing, depending on what whiskey we're making, we might use a little bit of Rök or a little bit of extra Rök. And if you have your own personal barrel, you can go for extra Rök, and that's incredibly rich and oily and smoky, not overwhelming, not over the top, not too much, just lots of those lovely bonfire flavors. So Svensk Rök is a single malt whiskey, again at 46.1%. Casking here is a variety of types of wood. We've got some first fill bourbon, some refill bourbon. We've got a little bit of refill Oloroso. We've got a little bit of Swedish oak, first fill and refill. And we've got a broad range of ages being used here. There's some whiskey that's 3.5 years old. We've got some whiskey which is 9.5, 10 years old, averaging out around 7.5 years. We use that younger whiskey to give us these lovely vital smoky notes, to keep it really phenolic and bold, whereas as smoky whiskey matures, those phenols tend to dissipate and get a little bit more integrated, and we've got some richer, rounder flavors too. And whilst Mack is my favorite whiskey in the range because it's such tremendous value for money and giving all those lovely big flavors, Svensk Rök is certainly the most intriguing, I think the most poetic, I think the most beautiful whiskey we make. I think there's nothing quite like this. Look, we all love a good Ardbeg or a Talisker now and again, but this offers, I think, something extra special. This combination of fruits, of citrus, of phenols, of bonfires, of forest, of earth. It's like nothing else. This was whiskey that, when I was first introduced to Mackmyra's range, really grabbed me. That's something you'll hear quite a lot from people, because it has got that unique quality about it. At 46.1%, do you want a drop of water? You be the judge here. Personally, I like it just as it comes. I think it's got everything it needs. I think it's perfectly balanced at 46%. So we'll look at a couple of questions there. Paul Gibbs, yeah, I love the taste note you've provided here. Lemons and pears, a little herbaceous, definitely. We get that lovely sort of burnt herbs. If you ever sort of toast some bay leaves or some thyme or some rosemary, star anise, I think so too.
Can I just
Chris
say,
Moore, go ahead, Nicky.
I was going to say, as somebody that's new to the peat journey, I can't do Talisker. I've tried Talisker. I can't do Ardbeg. I'm not there yet. This is just beautiful. Even nosing it made me want to drink it. You know, it's that balance. I can cope with the sweet and the peat, if you know what I mean. It's
Definitely.
that lovely balance. That's what this is gorgeous for me. Somebody like, people might say it's light, but for me, starting out, this is perfect.
It's a smoky whiskey which just begs you to keep tasting it. It's not one that's a challenge. It's not confronting you. It's just begging you to go a step further with every single sip.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Lee Baker, some salt on the finish. I definitely agree too. Finn, how's this working for you?
I was just going to say, actually, I mean, I agree with what everyone's saying. I get a very, a light, briny, seaweedy note off the back end of it. But for me, this is on the nose, especially. It's the most tannic of all of them. It's the most oaked of all of them. And for me, this is my favourite one of the core range. It's just got that extra complexity, that extra depth, the smoke as well, which is something that I didn't used to like, but now like and look for constantly. So for me, it's like the perfect end point in the core range if you're tasting them in this way. Obviously, we're moving on to the green tea in a moment, but it's it's just superb, and it's the only one I haven't covered on the channel yet, actually.
This one takes me back to a time when we went camping and we had a mass bonfire and we were dragging kind of bushes out from the forest to kind of throw on there just to keep it going. And someone got a blackberry bush and threw it on there, and you could hear the crackling and the smells were coming from it, and there's berries popped, and it takes me back to that every single time. It's just I'm transported back to that moment every time I drink this, and if a whiskey can do that for me, that is the be all and end all. If I can be transported to a place and time, that is amazing. There's no other can do that. For me, anyway, I've never had that before. So yeah, it's amazing.
It's absolutely stunning, and I think MC Drama has echoed your comment precisely. He said blackberry sherbet and bonfires.
Yeah.
Was he on the same camping trip, or is this? Have you not never met before? Or
it was like it was.
We were in the middle of Wales, in nowhere, in like a building that we'd hired ourselves. So there was nothing, nothing.
No light pollution. It was just
nothing.
Pitch
and we literally had to go into the forest, find our firewood, literally dragging trees. And we had like, you know, when you have not a bonfire, but it's like the hugest bonfire ever. Brilliant.
Back
to that because instantly. It was real wood, like wood you bought from the petrol station.
Crackling.
Yeah.
Smell. And I didn't drink whiskey then.
No, we didn't.
Tom has asked a really interesting question. Someone says there's a little hint of funk in there. Do we have direct fire wash still? You know, very few people use direct firing anymore because you can create. It's very difficult to control. It's not necessarily that efficient, but it does create some really interesting flavors. Yoichi, for example, they're direct fired. No, we don't. These are steam jacketed stills. But it's a huge compliment you say that, because we have got these lovely flashes of rich, really interesting flavors that really bounce around. Vin, I saw you put a drop of water in there. Has that developed the whiskey at all for you?
Yeah, it kind of released a lot more of the tannins for me. A few on the back end for me, it's quite heavily spicy, and not in a bad way. It's exactly what I like on my finish. You know, long, spicy, changing as it goes along. And I find the water kind of dilutes it and just kind of really just identifies those a little bit more. It's more of them aniseeds for me, a lot more of them core flavors that are coming through the range, but with that extra developed of that kind of salt brininess. And I was thinking about saying ashy earlier, but I wasn't sure about it. When I put the water in, it became a little more ashy. I use that carefully because I don't want to put people off if they're not into their peat, because obviously like Lafroig and things like that, very ashen. This is only just a really kind of like an idea at the back of it when the water's added, I think.
Yeah, no,
Would embers be appropriate?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's like one of the things I always say in my pompousness is the stages of a bonfire when I'm talking about peat. So you either have like a roaring bonfire, a dying bonfire, or in the case of Lafroig, you've got like the night has gone, it's the morning, it's this dead, ashy thing. And this is like you said, it's like that kind of crackling bonfire that's just about, it's still flaming, that hasn't gone out yet, and it's warm and spicy. And I try not to do that too much on the channel because it is a bit nonsensical, but that's where I go with it.
And indeed, it's about no nonsense on no nonsense whiskey. So, Svensk Rök, £46, £46.50 from all good spirits retailers. We do bottle that one in a 50 cl, so it's £46 roughly for 50 cl. Why? We hand make it. You know, there's extra stages of production there that cost us significantly more to do. We are not buying in back piles of malts here to make this whiskey. We're doing it all ourselves. I say we again. It's Hawken who does the maltings, not me. Other people grafting, making this, you know, a real hand-produced product. So it costs a touch more to create. So, but I'm sure you agree, cracking value for money nonetheless. All of these available on mackmyra.co.uk or your favorite spirit specialist. Okay, 4 of our core range whiskies, they're always available. But something we're very much known for is, of course, innovation, doing exciting things, doing new things, doing things that are different, pushing the boundaries of what whiskey can be. We want to do things which are unusual, which are complementary, which gives us a chance to explore what whiskey means to different people. And we do it most often through our seasonal releases. We bring out a seasonal twice a year, a spring and a winter special. And they go through different routes. Sometimes they're quite traditional in terms of what we use there. For example, our winter 2019 seasonal was a port cask finish. Winter saw lovely, rich, dark fruit flavors and chocolates and spices. They're a perfect winter dram. Spring last year was Äppelblom, meaning apple blossom, Calvados cask finish. That's been extremely well received over the last 12 months. Lovely, bright, fresh, zingy, tangy, malic. So the apple flavors that we get with Brooks whiskey amplified, intensified with barrels from Christian Drew and Calvados. And our spring season also has a brighter, lighter quality. Angela Dorazio, our master was recently inducted into the Whiskey Hall of Fame, and we've been picking up so many awards that the board said to Angela, we want you to do something which is completely unique. It's never been done before. That's another first for Mackmyra. And firsts are what we're all about. We were Sweden's first single malt distillery. Another first recently was AI Intelligence, the world's first artificial intelligence whiskey. And tonight we present you with another first, the first ever single malt whiskey, finished in green tea casks. Grunt te. Swedes that are watching, forgive my pronunciation. That's not quite right. But hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Grunt te. What have we done here? Angela loves travel. She loves Japan and she loves tea. And obviously she loves whiskey too. And she thought she would bring all those things together. We created a whiskey which has been matured in barrels, which previously contained a green tea maceration. You might phrase it as a non-sweet liqueur, working with a tea importer in Stockholm. She selected 4 types of tea, matchas and centures, and these wonderful, rare, vintage, small estate produced teas. They were macerated in alcohol, and we put them into what was essentially a refill Oloroso cask. So we'd been maturing whiskey in Oloroso casks. That whiskey came out to make another delicious whiskey. We put the green tea liquor in there, and we left it for 6-8 months to fully soak into the wood. We then had green tea casks. The whiskey went in there, and here is the result: the world's first green tea cask single malt whiskey. Have we got a picture of the bottle there? And the teas, is that available to us? No, our director has fallen asleep. I've been talking too much, and he's got bored and gone home. Sorry about that. So unfortunately, we can't show you the lovely image of the tea. We can show you the box. This is what you can find in the web shop and at all your favourite spirit merchants. Mackmyra Green Tea.
I think he's back.
He's back. He's back.
That's the best thing to do.
So, £60, 70 cl, 46%, single malt whiskey, green tea casks. But also Oloroso is important here as well. We've used that to support the flavours, giving it a nice sort of rich, fruity nuttiness. But over the top of that, we've got this lovely, fragrant, fresh, creamy, floral, herbaceous. I get a little bit of pandan. If you have pandan buns or pandan cake, that's that East Asian grass which is used to flavor pastries. Paul Gibbs, walk through a wet forest, definitely. I think maybe more of a sort of a bit of a tropical forest. It's got a really bright quality about it. I get a little bit of a sort of rose petal, maybe like a lily, like a white flower.
I get all the flowers, yeah.
The honeysuckle coming through, maybe. And it is our spring season after all. You know, the trees are in bloom, the blossoms are appearing, and it's represented well here.
Yeah. I love, because I drink green tea quite a bit, and green tea, if you don't drink it, it's quite bitter. You know, you have to kind of get used to it. There's a bitter tang. And I love that this whiskey balances that out so well. There's the berries, there's the fruity, there's the floral. So you don't get the bitter tang that you have if you just have green tea. But you can taste the green tea as well as the berries, if that makes sense. So the whole floral thing just eases it in. It's just like beautifully soft, and it's beautiful.
Phenomenal balance on this whiskey. A little bit of tropical fruit as well, maybe some lychee, maybe some papaya. MC Drama naming all the flowers that he knows there, hyacinths and geraniums. Really fresh and bright, incredible, this whiskey. Vin, what's this saying for you?
So I'm mirroring a couple of things in the comments again. When I reviewed this, I said all throughout the nose and the palate, I was struggling to pull out any kind of green tea. And someone got in contact with me privately and said, what kind of green tea do you normally drink? And I was like, well, I just drink this kind of like tea bag green tea I get in the supermarket. And they were like, well, that's why you're not getting it, because you have to go out and you have to try some proper sencha tea that you steep in the right way, 70 degrees, no more than a minute, that sort of thing. So I went out and did that and got it. And now I've tried it again. I was just like, okay, I'm getting that now. The really key, if you're looking for people who are looking for the green tea notes, right on the back end, let it finish and then let it breathe, and you'll get some slight bitterness out of it there. I think some tea-like leafy tannic notes. But for me, I'm not sure where that green tea really influences throughout it, but it's doing something good to it. That's all I can tell.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, when you have an Oloroso cask or a rum cask, you know, anything that's quite a clear flavour, it's there, it's present, it's bold. Here, it's much more subtle, much more integrated, and it creates something new, you know, that's greater than some of its parts.
I'm very clever because green tea could overpower it, and it doesn't. It's just so balanced. It's not bitter. It's so balanced.
And I think it's been about the right selection of teas. You can see on the screen there, we've got the different types of matches and senchas, and it's about selecting the right flavours that are going to be steeped, as Vin says, in the right ways, at the right temperatures, and the right flavours are yielded. Green tea is unique. It's extremely special. It's absolutely beautiful whiskey. Angela, you have done it again. It is a revelation. Another first for Mackmyra, another first for the world of whiskey. So that brings to a close the four whiskies. But I'd like to see if you've got any more questions for us. Anyone on the chat want to ask anything in particular? Tom, green apples and pears on the green tea, definitely. And you've got a full bottle on the way, so you're very lucky to be receiving that. Oh, there we go. A little plug there for the Somerton Club, who are doing some wonderful things. Phenomenal value for money. They do a lot of our whiskies. It is mind-boggling what you get for your subscription fee there. So we're big fans of the Somerton Club here at Mackmyra, as we are at New Dram Drinker and No Nonsense Whisky. Next season to be announced at the Somerton Whisky Festival, you believe? Ooh, no comment. That's above my pay grade. So I'll refrain from talking about that. Okay, so we're gonna continue the tasting. We are gonna head over to No Nonsense Whisky for an after party where we've got 3 very special drams. We're all gonna be back. Anthony, Nicky, and Vin. We're all gonna be back there, but this is obviously gonna be over to Vin's show, so you're gonna hear less of me, thankfully. Less verbal diarrhea, more professionalism, fortunately. So thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. Heart of England Whisky Alliance, we were coming to see you. We want to come and see you again. If you're not in the Heart of England Whisky Alliance and you live close to sort of Coventry, Solihull, southeast of Birmingham kind of part of the world, become a member. They're a great club with some great people. You should definitely join them at their next tastings, be it online or live. If you want us to come and do a tasting for you, be that for your family, your friends, your colleagues, your whiskey club, your business, give us a shout. Come and see us at mackmyra.com. Send us an email. We'll try and arrange that a tasting for you too. We have got a broad variety of whiskeys. You can see all of those on our website. But let me just say thank you very much to Anthony and Nicky at New Dram Drinker. Thanks for being here tonight. Check out their YouTube, check out their Instagram. And to Vin PF from No Nonsense Whisky, thank you very much. And I'll see you over on your channel shortly. Thank you very much. Lee, you're very, very welcome. Thanks for being with us tonight. And you guys, of course, have got a special price at our web shop. So I look forward to you filling your boots and enjoying yourselves there. Thanks again. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Skål. Are we out?